Hey guys, I wanted to talk about a favorite race of mine today. This one is the Kingdom of Angmar. Angmar is ruled by the Witch King of Angmar. He is the leader of spirits, monsters, orc legions, lots of foul creatures. This race has a plethora of options to it, and it actually is known as a shutdown race. This race will stop your opponent from pretty much being able to do almost any of his battle plans. It's actually one of the few races that are actually able to do this. It has units that can stop his heroes dead in their tracks for an entire game. It has units that can move the opponent's players' units, and it even has the Shade, which is actually one of the most menacing spirits. This unit is actually capable of making your orcs go toe-to-toe with elves without even breaking a sweat. It's actually pretty incredible. This race is also littered with magic. It has a lot of shutdown in its magic. It's just got a lot of capability. A lot of heroes really dread this race, and I think this is actually probably one of the most dreaded races in the game, depending on your opponent and how he feels about the ability to not move any of his stuff. So let's get right into it. Let's see what's good about Angmar. Now, when we talk about Angmar, we mostly want to mention their spirits. Their spirits are the shutdown aspect of the game and the magic aspect of the game. This is where Angmar truly excels, and it shines above other races. Its magic is the same as Mordor with ringwraiths. However, they usually are forced to pick the 3 ringwraiths that actually boast either the most magic or the most shutdown capability. In this case, the most magic would go to the Witch King. 20 points of will. That is nothing to laugh at. This guy can pass magic for a really long time and even has combat ability to boost. He is able to shut down wizards, any other magical opponent. I think only the Undying would probably be able to take him on in a one-on-one fight. The next unit you have is the Tainted and the Dwemer Lake. I don't have the Dwemer Lake here, but the Dwemer Lake effectively makes it so that anytime an opposing hero uses a point of Might, Will, or Fate within 12 inches of him, he's got to use another one on a 4-up. He rolls a d6, and on a 4-up, he's got to use another one. This actually makes heroes really hesitant to use Might, Will, or Fate around him, hence the shutdown aspect. The Tainted actually has an ability very similar in nature. Warriors can't respond to the stand-fast or heroic actions of heroes. So effectively, your enemy's heroes can't spend Might, Will, or Fate. Their warriors won't follow them. It's really a pain in the butt for the opponent. Now, you may have heard that I said that the Shade right here is actually capable of making orcs go to toe-to-toe with elves. How's that possible? It's because the Shade drops the rolls of an opposing fight by 1. Now, this isn't their fight value. This is literally the dice roll that they are rolling, effectively making it for basic warriors it's impossible to roll a 6. And for heroes, they got to use a point of might to bring that 6 back to a 6 from a 5. This actually makes orcs not even just orcs, but just the ringwraiths, everything, the trolls themselves. This makes them all viable against all armies. And then you got the Barrow-wights. The Barrow-wights are actually an extremely feared section of this army. They have the most dreaded spell in the game. Even ringwraiths don't have this spell. It's called Paralyze. Paralyze will pretty much take down a unit for an entire game. They have to try to roll a 6. Now, friends can help them, but often they don't get the opportunity to do this. And also another unit that you really want to know about is the Spectres. The Spectres are actually capable of moving your opponent's models for them. They have to take courage tests, so elves and dwarves usually will pass this with ease, but with ringwraiths around, a lot of times they will fail this test. The ringwraiths will drop the courage values of the opponent, where the Spectres can actually just pick them up and move them around. They can't move after the Spectre has moved them. This race can be extremely frustrating for an opponent to deal with, especially if they've never fought it before. When we talk about Angmar, we have to also bring up their monsters. Now, they don't have quite the plethora of monsters that Mordor or Moria have. However, they still have cave trolls, and they actually have a cave troll chieftain, which Moria does not have. He's actually pretty cheap for what he does. He's a 3-might hero. I don't have him here. His name is Birder, but we do actually play with him a lot, and he's really, really good. He's well worth his points and can lead an army of cave trolls. Cave trolls come in cheaper than mountain trolls, which makes them a little bit more spammable. This can actually make them quite a threat, especially when combined with a Shade or the other shutdown abilities of Angmar. Another one worth mentioning is Gulavar, the Vampire Lord. This guy is actually pretty much a problem for your opponent. At a massive point value, he can fly around and tear up everything he wants, and even if he takes wounds, he can regenerate them. This monster is nothing to just take lightly. He's definitely a problem on the battlefield. And even your ringwraiths themselves can take the Fell Beast option. This is an option that Mordor has, but Angmar pretty much blends Moria and Mordor's monsters very nicely into a single race. I think that their monsters are definitely worth taking in combat. So with all the expensive monsters and spirits that I've just named, you might think that Angmar is a really small force, but this is actually not true. Angmar has a lot of Orc options, an Orc Shaman to lead them and cast magical spells to keep them in play, and Orc Cavalry, the Warg Riders, and Orc Trackers, some of the best archers in the game not the best archers, the best Orc archers in the game. They're extremely cheap. This race can pump out a lot of units to help support the monsters and spirits that are fighting with them. Actually, another great thing, I forgot to mention about the spirits, the orcs and all of them will wound the defense values of the opponent, but the spirits will wound the courage values of the opponent. So, therefore, you have multiple different ways to wound the enemy, and orcs are just one of those ways. You can trap them up and actually just wound them in both ways. Bring spirits and the orcs into battle with them. The orcs will pretty much make up your front line to hold the ranks while the spirits do their thing against the enemy. Now with all these strengths for Angmar, we really got to get into some of their weaknesses. You really have to take these in mind when playing this force. One thing for sure, really low defense on its units. I'm not talking about the heroes. Ringwraiths are defense 8. And the Shade is even defense 8. And the Bearwhites are defense 7. That's not bad at all. However, the units themselves never get above 5 unless you get to a Cave Troll. And for your monster that you've paid a ton of points for, to have just only a defense of 6 is pretty bad. Most warriors will take them down on 5s. It won't be hard to bring this army down. Even your Fury won't be able to keep up with the demand if you actually let your opponent get into you. This is the point of all those Spectres, the point of all those Ringwraiths and those Shades and everything like that. You need to prevent yourself from being wounded in the first place. Otherwise, this army will take a beating, which means ranged bow fire is a problem for you. One, you have no bows other than Orc Trackers, and believe me, they will go down quick. At a defense of 3, they can't go in a bow war very long. The enemy will just shoot you to pieces, and so you need to use the Spectres to take them out. That's pretty much your form of archery. With a 6-inch movement and then a 12-inch range for their spell, well, actually, it's not a spell, it's an ability. They have an 18-inch range for all their threats. This is pretty much the only way to deal with archers. You need to take them out in this way. If it's not for archers, then cav models, you really don't have that strong of a cav. Warg Riders are pretty decent, but an actual strong cav force will be a problem for you. However, once again, your shutdown elements will take care of this. Just ultimately, make sure you don't get wounded. I'd say archery is probably the biggest threat for that area. However, even on the topic of getting wounded, your heroes, despite having a high defense, actually have only 1 wound. Most of them anyway. Your Ringwraiths only have 1 wound. Your Bearwhites have only 1 wound. The Shade, whom has 3 wounds, and actually it's quite durable, unfortunately has a very, very low courage. So once you break, he's leaving you. He's not going to stick around with you at all. So you really don't want to break with this army. So just to complement the fact that you have really low wounds, you pretty much don't stand up to breaking very easily. Your army will leave you. Your Spectres should stick around, however. They have a high courage of 6, and your Ringwraiths have a very high courage, and you're usually able to keep the army in place. Breaking isn't worrying too much, except for the Shades. The Shades, which keep your army pretty much on par with any other army, will go away, and that is a huge problem. So definitely try to prevent yourself from breaking. You want to pick the fights, and this army is just easily the best one to do that. Now, to win with this army, because of how fragile you are, you need to be able to fight the opponent on your own terms. This means you want them to move to you, not the other way around. Now, this doesn't just mean let them march towards you and let them engage your front ranks. Instead, move them even faster. Let's say your opponent's marching towards you. Let's go ahead and take those fights and move them one-on-one. Those Spectres you have can easily target all the units of the opposing models. There's no in-the-way test for your own ranks. All they need to be able to do is see the model, and there's no other problem. So essentially, you just grab the front rank, you sell them, okay, I want you to go ahead and move toward me. You pick one at a time, and they take their courage test, and essentially, they should end up looking like this. This is not a situation that your opponent wants to be in. All you do is you move his units about 1 inch away from yours, since they're not technically allowed to charge you. However, you can just charge them. You move the specters first, make your opponent come to you, then move 4 onto one guy. 4 orcs can easily deal with a single guy, and hell, even throw one guy onto the cave troll. Your opponent will be pretty upset knowing that his army is just moving at your command. Also, this is the only way really to play this race really effectively. Well, not the only way, but if you're going to have these specters, which costs a huge fortune on your army, this is one way you definitely need to play them. Otherwise, you're extremely fragile. Most armies will be able to wound you pretty easily. This is definitely one of the best ways I'd recommend. Now, in this situation, let's say they've actually met with your lines with their full force and you couldn't stop them. Well, obviously you wouldn't move their front ranks. Their front ranks are engaged with yours. So instead, you want to move their back ranks away. So this is where the scope changes a little bit. Your specters are still doing the same thing, just kind of in reverse. And that will create the situation just like this. Now your opponents are leaving the fight. So instead of making them come in one-on-one, now you're making them leave so that you fight one-on-one. Your opponent will really be frustrated by this. I'm not going to lie, a lot of opponents get frustrated by the ability to move their opposing players' models. However, this race is not undefeatable. They just have to take down your specters, which are in the back ranks. This is actually kind of typical of most races. Most of their support units are really annoying and they really need to take them out. So this race is just no different. Make sure you have a ring wraith in your force. The ring wraith will make it easier for your specters to move. Now let's say your opponent has a cav charge coming in. Now this is where your Barrow Wights and your Spectres can also make a difference. The Barrow Wight on a simple 4-up can cast his Paralyze spell. This will dismount the Rider, and the Rider really won't be able to do anything about it. Also, Spectres can move them away, so that way the Cav will charge you one-on-one or on your terms. If the Cav are moving close to you, go ahead and affect them. The best part is the Cav move 10 inches or more. So therefore, you can easily move them up to your battle lines. You charge them, they won't get any of their Cav bonuses. You are really a threat to Cav or anything like that. You need Spectres in your race, you need those units. Now there is a way to play this army without Spectres or any spirits at all, and I'll show you how. Now this is where all those cave trolls come in handy. Your cave trolls are extremely spammable, easily being one of the cheapest monsters in the game. There are a couple that are a little bit cheaper, but this is the best that you have. And they are awesome. If you spam these guys up, they will cause an absolute threat to your opponent. Keep hurling models. You remember to use the brutal power attacks. They absolutely make your army more effective. You can even throw in Gullivar if you want. Gullivar might be a bit of a hefty point sink for a troll army. I would recommend keeping him with a bunch of orcs only, but if you do happen to use him, you would engage the front line with your orcs and instead throw Gullivar in the back. Now, I have a ring wraith here. I know I said no spirits. However, you need to lead the race with something. Gullivar is capable of leading, so if you don't happen to pick Gullivar, you can pick Birder if you want, or captains. Then the race would fight very similar to Mordor or Moria. You just need to swarm and slam the enemy. It might actually kind of be a boring time for you, but that would effectively be how you play them. You really want the troll spamming. I think that's kind of the best way to go about it. If not that, then yeah, just legions of orcs, pour orcs onto your enemy. You're going to really feel like you're playing Mordor, though, at that point. And when you play Angmar, one of the great things about Angmar is the aesthetics of the race. You should really take advantage of that. Now, and a lot of opponents might be wondering, with all these great attributes about Angmar, how the hell do I defeat this army? They can move your own units and paralyze them and take them down. I mean, it's really difficult. But the obvious answer is yes, you could play dwarves or elves. They have a really high courage and can usually stand up to a lot of specter spamming. However, if you're playing a low courage army like Arnor or orcs or anything like that, then you're going to need a different option. If you have a lot of bow fire in the race, I actually think this is a good option to take down the specters. Specters are obviously going to sit in the back ranks. However, the often ignored heroic accuracy rule can easily allow you to fire through the ranks and assassinate targets. You only got to be able to see parts of the model, and usually the specters are going to be visible because they want to see parts of you. So just take all your archers that you have and heroic accuracy through them. If you have elf bows, this is actually a lot easier. Longbows for Gondor or dwarf bows, anything with strength 3. Specters only have a defense of 5. So you can just easily break them with only a 5 to roll. This might be a little tough because you are spending might to do this, but the only other option I've got for you is also spending might. Heroic fights. Call heroic fights on the front line and just butcher through to get to that back rank. The orc spamming that the Angmar army can do prevent them from being surrounded very easily, so you might need to punch through the middle. This is actually best for most really strong heroes because a shade will nullify them. You're going to want a hero with a lot of might, 3 at minimum. All that might you have is meant to fight the shade or stop you from being paralyzed. The paralyzed ability is actually really annoying. You're going to have to roll a 6, and so when you do get paralyzed, you're going to need that might to get that roll up to a 6. Otherwise, you just have to butcher through the front ranks. That's really the only other option beyond archery. Otherwise, you can hit them maybe with cav. Hit them with a cav charge. If you actually manage to pull a cav charge off, it should absolutely wipe out the orc front rank. That's pretty much about it, though. There's no other real easy ways. I mean, it's all race dependent. Some races have magic. You can use magic to take down the opponent. But this is just for the basics of every race. Every race is bound to have archery, at least some good archery. Even Mordor has some, 4-up shooting accuracy with the orc trackers. Granted, you will need 6 to take them down, but otherwise, slam into the enemy. So let me know what you guys think of the Angmar army. Do you think it's weak? Do you think it's strong? Have I missed any details on how to defeat them? I'm really interested in your thoughts. This is just a discussion video of my thoughts on how to defeat the Angmar army. So if you guys have any better ideas, definitely let me know in the comments below. I'm really interested in hearing it. I love this force a lot, but a lot of people really don't like fighting against it, and I'd like to give them some more opportunities. And for those people who actually really like using the army, I wanted to give them more opportunities to win. Believe it or not, Angmar loses a little more often than people give it credit for. Yes, Spectre spamming is a bit of a problem. However, there are a lot of armies that can easily deal with that problem. A lot of armies pass Courage with absolute ease. I didn't want to get into that in these videos because, yes, those are specific units that almost feel like list tailoring toward those armies. So I just wanted to give you guys the basics. So definitely let me know what your thoughts are. Until the next time, this is DCHL Devin. Thanks for watching.